All right, so we're doing this Anthurium Crystallinum today. She has been transitioned over to full hydroponic roots. This leaf is a little crispy, but if you know Anthuriums, you already know. But future leaves will come out looking like this. Beautiful, glorious, huge, thick leaves, Anthurium Crystallinum. There goes the roots. Completely transitioned over, happy and healthy and robust. And we are going to be using braided nylon rope as the wick. I don't like the cotton wicks. And again, since I've got more people on here, check out these Orium micans that I just got. I just sourced them. I do buy from customers. I like to keep the money within the community and not so much into the billionaire, nurseries and all the big nurseries and stuff. I do source from my customers. So if you guys are collectors and you're into the propagation and selling markets, definitely reach out because I'm always open to source from customers and fellow plant collectors. I prefer to keep our money involved in our community and not so much. A lot of these big nurseries are into some pretty questionable practices as far as how they treat their employees working in fields and whatnot. So if you guys do your own props and sales, definitely hit me up. Okay, so this 1/2-inch braided nylon rope, this should wick a substantial amount of moisture. Hopefully it'll fit in these holes, it might not. Yes, it fits. It fits. All right, so this is a self-watering pot. We are going to be potting her up into LECA. Grab my scissors here. And again, this plant has been transitioned completely hydroponically, which means that her roots are established to grow straight up in water. So it will be a slight transition to semi-hydro as it is a little bit drier, of course. They're gonna have contact with air, but they tolerate the transition. This is the long transition process. They tolerate it really well though. You can plant your plant straight into LECA. That is the quick method. But there is more of a risk of root rot in that transition versus starting by getting them into water and fully hydroponic transition first. There we go. All right, so because she's got wet feet, we're gonna leave a lot of this cordage up here. That's gonna bring a lot more moisture up into the root zone and into the LECA because we don't wanna stress her out and have her roots go drastically dry, right? Just playing nice with her. Okay, so that's that. For our portion of the pot, so this is where our nutrient solution will be living, and the wicks will dip down into that and draw up that moisture. I actually made this a little too long. I guess what we can do is just make a full-blown loop. Cut the wick, we're just going to bend it around the pot to give more even coverage of our rope in here, kind of like a letter S, right? Okay, so that'll sit like that. Hit the pot. We'll dip down into that and draw up that moisture. I actually made this a little too long. I guess what we can do is just make a full-blown loop into that. We won't cut the wick, we're just going to bend it around the pot to give more even coverage of our rope in here, kind of like a letter S, right? Okay, so that'll sit like that. It will wick the moisture up into the pot. Lucky. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is start by putting a layer of the LECA in here so that the plant has some room to grow down into the pot. If this were just a straight reservoir system without the self-wicking, the bottom 1/3 of the LECA would need to be just substrate and then the plant would go in the upper 2/3. That is because you don't want your plant's roots submerged directly into the reservoir. But this, keeping it up in the top 2/3 is good practice anyway, because then the plants are going into and establish itself. Okay, so here are the roots. As you can see, all this new growth here happy, healthy roots, nice hydroponic roots. So her transition into LECA is going to be an easy one because she's already been established in just water. So while we're potting up this plant, one of the important things we have to consider is making sure that these roots are spread out so that they can get good contact with the substrate and also have some air circulation around them as well. We don't want them all bunched up. And Anthurium roots are more brittle. They're not as flexible as some other plant roots are. So they're thick, you know, they're like tubes kind of, but they also will snap fairly easily if you're too rough with them. So you want to use a delicate hand when dealing with these. Just going ahead and spreading these out so they have their own space. Kind of like kids, when you have kids living in the house, each one of them needs their own bedroom so they don't fight. There she is. All right, so now we're just gonna backfill with LECA. And this LECA has been rinsed. I did not soak it, unfortunately, but it is wet. You don't want to LECA on your plants. And you want to be sure to flush out the LECA because there is clay dust that comes in the bag when you first get it delivered. That clay dust, of course, is going to raise the total dissolved solids level of your plant's solution. And that can cause some issues with nutrient uptake and things like that. Also potentially drying out your roots. But when you are rinsing this clay dust off of your LECA, your first couple of rinses, you want to do that outside because clay dust will settle to the bottom of your pipes and it'll cause a clay plug to set in, which will clog your indoor plumbing, and then that's very expensive and hard to get rid of. So your first rinses need to be outside so that clay dust does not settle in your pipes. Once you get your LECA rinse clean, you're good to rinse from now on indoors. But until you've got that dust removed, do it outside. Garden hose or whatever. All right, and that's it. That's simple. This is her new home. We're just gonna get her some nutrient solution. But here she is. And again, this leaf has been traumatized, unfortunately. You know, when you have new leaves that have not hardened off yet, they're very sensitive. It's like fresh baby skin. So any kind of damage, this one had issues unfurling, if I remember correctly. So she's traumatized, but this is how the leaves look when they are not traumatized. They get quite large.